Hey, what's up, everybody? This is JeffreyJoslin, and you are listening to my thoughts on this and also on that. I'm an artist. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, composer. I make things. I create things, and I also like to talk. And this week, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on privilege. That's right. Privilege. Most of the folks that benefit from privilege are either male or white. There's not really many other folks that get to benefit from the magic that is privilege. That's right, the magic dust that is privilege. You pop out of your mother as a white male. Welcome to the world where all of your dreams automatically come true. That's right. You can have anything you want. You don't have to work for it. It's handed to you. You can be whatever you want to be. There are no hurdles between you and that thing. You can go and achieve anything you want, and life will not stand in your way. No one will stand in your way. You do not have to work hard. You do not have to set goals. All you have to do is be white and be male. And you can win automatically. Now, obviously, I'm being sarcastic to point out the absurdity of this idea. First of all, no one gets to choose. Well, no one gets to choose what race they will be born. Now, there is definitely a number of opinions on whether or not you could choose your gender. I'm of the opinion that you cannot on a biological framework, but that's a different conversation. But you don't get to choose how you come out your mama, in other words. So you come into this world as you are. So there are a lot of folks nowadays that like to talk about privilege. There's a lot of folks, like to blame the ails and the ills of the world on white dudes and all their privilege. It also renders white dudes opinionless and not able to weigh in on any conversations because, well, their opinion doesn't really matter because they're white dudes and they've had everything in their life handed to them. So let's look at this idea of privilege, right? All right, so the idea of privilege is that you've got it better than everybody else, or a particular. Now, if you look at the definition of racism, I'm not going to look it up, so I'll probably get it wrong to some degree, but to the extent, if you look it up, it says that to deem one race as superior or inferior to another. So to deem someone else by race as privileged or underprivileged, by definition, is racist. You take it a step further, it's probably also sexist. I don't know the definition of sexism offhand, but if you just use the same principles by how you come to that definition, well, I would imagine it's deeming someone as superior or inferior based on sex. Now, you might think that I'm just some privileged white male just throwing my opinions around because there are no repercussions for them, and I can say whatever I want and do whatever I want because that's just the world. But why do I care? The reason that I care is because, number one, I'm a truther. I'm a truth seeker. I'm interested in the truth for all people, all races, all sexes, all people. My hope and my heart is for all people, not just the white folks. Definitely not just for the dudes. So and here's why. If you start off by deeming someone else as privileged, well then you in the same breath are deeming yourself as underprivileged, at a disadvantage, less likely to succeed. Now, I don't know about you, but you can name any famous person, anyone who has achieved anything great, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Doesn't matter. Anyone who's achieved anything great, they've all overcome circumstances. Some of them very dire, which, to be honest, the more dire the circumstances, the better the story, the better the achievement. Now, none of these people ever got to where they're at by blaming other people. It's not going to help you out. So you can talk about other people's privilege all you want, but all you're doing is putting yourself at a disadvantage. I mean, if you want to achieve something, especially as an American, there's literally no reason you can't do and achieve anything you want. I mean, that's why people are just chomping at the bit to come to this country. Why? Because there's free market. There's freedom of thought and idea and expression and creativity and competition and opportunity to succeed, opportunity to, if you're willing to work hard, take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you, educate yourself. You can do and be anything you want in this country, without a doubt. You may disagree with me, but you're probably sitting at home on your couch like doing nothing. Like, there's just no excuse, especially nowadays with social media and the ability to get whatever you do to anyone in the world. It's never been easier. The ability to get information has never been easier. So this idea of privilege, deeming some other race or gender as privilege, just puts yourself at a disadvantage. The only way you're ever going to get anywhere in life, regardless of circumstance, I'm not denying anyone's circumstances. Many of us are products of our parents' choices, our grandparents' choices. We end up at a certain place in life, but there's a turning point that happens in your life when all of a sudden you go, you know what? I'm in control of the outcome of my life. And that's the moment you wake up. Anything prior to that, blaming the actions of your parents, the actions of your grandparents, the circumstances, I'm not going to pretend to know what it's like to be a person of color growing up in a violent neighborhood or a impoverished neighborhood. I'm not going to debate whether those are real circumstances, but it's your choice is what you do with those circumstances. You can whine about it and complain about it and make all kind of excuses why you can't succeed. Well, then great, you won't succeed. No, you lose. No, who cares? No one else cares. You lose. You make excuses for why you can't succeed and tell me or anyone else all the reasons you can't. Well, then you won't. I, for one, don't use the word can't. I was taught by my parents that I could do and be anything I wanted to. Now, you might say, well, it's because you're white. Not necessarily. I don't know if you've seen any homeless folks lately, but most of the homeless people I see are white males. I'm sure there's a ton of statistics that I could point to. I don't have them readily, but I'm sure there's tons of. I've heard some of them. Tons of statistics that can point out the fact that maybe it's not so easy just being a white dude in America. But it doesn't. It shouldn't matter. The only reason it would matter to you is if you're interested in blaming something on somebody else. I, for one, nothing that I've ever been given in this life has been handed to me. I've definitely been given gifts, and I come from the framework that everything I have has been given to me by God. And I believe that's one of the things that makes America great, is that that's one of our foundational principles. It's like these inalienable rights that are granted to every person, every human, despite their race, despite their sex, despite whatever. I mean, now we can have a debate as far as what we consider those rights to be, and as far as policy is concerned, but the ability to succeed, the ability to do and create and achieve, I think, is in each individual person, regardless of race, gender, and circumstance. And by deeming somebody as privileged, you're not doing anybody any good. And it's really not that true. I mean, I'm sure there's a number of ways that you could make a statistical case or prove the point that, maybe it's not that not that as easy as you might think. But I say all this to say, if you're someone who's out there pointing at the woes of the world as a result of somebody else's race, somebody else's gender, you're just losing. You're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. You're wasting a lot of time. You could be now if you're someone that sees issues in society, for instance, there was the Black Lives Matter movement. There was this conversation about white cops killing black individuals. Now, you can very quickly go, oh, it's all, systematic racism. You can start pointing at America. You can start making these blanket statements about what's really going on when in actuality it's probably just a couple of ignorant racist dudes with anger issues. That's not indicative of the whole. So you can very quickly get into situations, especially with the mainstream media, which I believe personally is slighted against you, is designed to make you fearful, designed to present a narrative that keeps you enslaved and keeps your mind controlled, especially if you think of the mainstream media as some sort of source of truth or some sort of end-all, be-all source of information. Like, it's your job to take the information that you're given and do the research and formulate your own opinion. Think for yourself. God gave you a mind and a brain to reason and think and use logic and all these types of faculties. You shouldn't take, I don't care where you go, whether it be church or school or anywhere, shouldn't take things at face value. Should take them and research them and live with them and wrestle with them and come to your own conclusion. Be a free thinker. This allows you to remain in control of your own destiny and to be free, to be free, which to me, that's my hope and the goal and wish for every person. And this is why these types of things bother me. Because when I hear people talking about privilege, I'm just like, dude, or dudette, the only one you're hurting is yourself, and you're spinning around in circles talking about stuff that you don't actually know what you're talking about. And more than likely, you got this idea from the news or some, news TV station or some celebrity or somebody said this and you go, yeah, that's right. That's the white man. That's right. All of our problems, it's the white man. It's like, okay. Let me give you a little advice. Whose problems who's the source of my problems? Me. I am the source of my problems. If there's something that's wrong in my life, it's me. Now, I can't say that I've always been that way, but I know that at this point in my life, as a 34-year-old dude, I've realized very quickly that blaming other people does not help anything. The quicker you can say, all right, this problem in my life, I'm gonna confront it. I'm gonna take responsibility. I mean, you look at any rehabilitative addiction program, the first step is what? Admitting you have a problem. That's probably the hardest thing for people. We don't want to admit we have a problem. We don't want to admit that we've done anything wrong. We don't want to admit that we've made mistakes, because then we have to look ourselves in the mirror and see all of our darkness, all of our faults, all of our frailties. And we don't like to look at those things. We like to pretend like we have it all together. But I'm of the opinion that that's what's good about God, and what's good about grace, and what's good about forgiveness, and good about repentance, and what's good about the ability for second chances. But first you have to go, I see how I see how I am the source of my own problem. Whether that be making excuses, or whether that be blaming other people, or whether that be not working hard enough. I don't know, man. I don't know where you're at. Yeah, you may go, yeah, but you don't know my circumstance. You're right. I don't know your circumstance. It might be terrible. It might be super, super terrible. But guess what? What are you going to do about that? You're going to blame everybody else, or you're going to go, freaking strap it up, get tough, mentally tough, and do something about it. Change it. Use your brain. Use the gifts you have. Figure out the thing that you want to do and do it. Don't let other people stand in your way. Especially, I think that this is the other thing that really irks me, is these ideas create fear, and you get a bunch of people walking around in fear, going, especially, I remember one time during the Black Lives Matter thing, I've always loved black folks. I always loved the black race. I've always loved black music. I've always, I played football and played, and I've been making music. I've just always been around a lot of black folks, and they're just such beautiful people. They're such warm people. They have great laughs. They love great food. They have great communal, family oriented. Their church services are awesome. Their dance moves are sweet. They're just cool. They got swag. They're a great, awesome people who have also experienced great tragedy and great injustice. But at the same time, I think that is what gives them such that the beauty that you find in their culture. I think, and the tight knittedness is because they have come from adversity. But I mean, some of the greatest heroes of our time, I know some of my greatest heroes are people of color. I mean, my heroes growing up were Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, back before he was, whatever color he ended up later in life. But Marvin Gaye, Al Green, Otis Redding. The list goes on. Diana Ross, Smokey Robinson. These people to me were what I strive to be. And I don't think they got where they were at by blaming, the white man for their problems. Not to say that there weren't issues in their lives, not to say there weren't racist people, racial injustices, especially in the 60s, especially during, Martin Luther King's time. But just like Martin Luther King, he could have spent all his time sitting at home blaming everybody and blaming those people for the way, or you go out and do something about it, and he did. He wasn't afraid to stand up to that. And that's, I guess, what you have to decide is what's your play. And if there are systematic things, if there are systematic racial injustices, I think those things should come down. I think, and I think if you're although I think if those things are going to come down, they're going to have to come down from within. And that's, that means even more, you're going to have to, if that's the case, then we need more politicians of color. If that's the case, we need more police officers of color. If that's the case, you got to infiltrate, if you will, these systematic. You can't do it from the outside, so you can rail and scream all you want to, but you have to make change yourself. Anyways, but I was talking about my love for the black race, and I think what really bothered me during that Black Lives Matter time, when it was real heavy, and there was, I can't think of the guy's name, Trayvon Martin, and there was a couple others, that were really in the news, and there was a lot of conversation going on. I saw a lot of anger and resentment, and a lot of folks that I knew, black folks, really raging out, and like I saw a potential for like people talking about rioting, and it seemed very violent, a lot of the response. And I think what bothered me was there was this fear-based thing, like irrational. I don't mean irrational in the sense that it's irrational to feel sadness for when something happens to somebody that's tragic. I think it's irrational to correlate things that aren't related. So if you hear a couple stories, a couple isolated stories, all of a sudden the story is all the white cops are killing black people, and that's obviously wasn't the case. In fact, statistically, during those years, there was actually more white people killed by cops than there were black, and I'm not making that up. Like I remember looking that statistic up, and I think it was a lot larger. But what I'm saying is, that wasn't the story you heard, because that wasn't the angle, that wasn't the narrative. So you have this angle, this narrative that's being pushed, which is like all the white cops are killing all the black folks, and then what happens is this response, this emotional response of fear, and so then you get people that are fearful, and that's what bothers me. Is you have this powerful race of people, this group that's capable of just like really amazing things. All of a sudden, they get this thing in their head and they go, oh, I'm at a disadvantage and the white man's out to get me, and it's systematic and goes all the way up to the top. And all of a sudden, it creates this anger and resentment towards an entire group of people, most of which in this country are not actually racist. Most, I would bet my life on the fact that most people in this country are not racist. So there's probably a handful, man. I'm sure there's, some, but it's not the majority. It's not even close. I think it has to be like a small minority. Most Americans don't care what you look like, what you sound like, what you act like. They just want to be free. They want to live their lives. They want to do what they love, and they want to be left alone. And so, people might wonder, like, oh, well, what do you care? Why I care is because I care about all people. I care about the freedom of all people. I care about truth, and I care about, people's potential. And if you got a whole bunch of people that are mentally enslaved by a system that says, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. Here's why. Here's a number of things. Here's why you should be afraid. I have to push back against that, because I don't believe that's true. I believe you can do anything you want. And in fact, taking great leaps and writing great stories and doing great things often take great adversity, often take moving in the face of trials and struggles and obstacles. And that's what makes a good story. I don't know how many of you have seen a movie where you get a guy or a girl who's, from beginning to end has no troubles, and at the end they're successful, and you just go from one success to the other. That would make a boring movie. That's life. Like, you get the hand you're dealt, and then it's like the game of life. It's like, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to make? The Bible talks about, and the church talks about, of all of us giving an account to God. It's like, what did you do? You had this great opportunity. I heard this statistic earlier. I watch a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk videos and content. If you haven't heard of him, I would advise you to check him out. It's really inspirational stuff. But talked about the statistical likelihood of actually being alive is like 1 in 400 trillion, something crazy. I might be botching that, but it's something outrageous. The sheer fact that you are alive is a statistical anomaly. So that sheer fact is a gift in and of itself. And then at that point, it's just, what are you going to do with it? And sitting there and pointing at another group of people as more privileged, having it easier, it's just not helpful. It's not helpful, and it's just not true. I mean, now you might say, oh, what about all the white folks that enslaved them and they were at a disadvantage? And yeah, all that stuff's true. I mean, like, that's a terrible thing that happened, But then you also have a bunch of white folks who fought in a civil war and a president in Abraham Lincoln that fought to free those folks. It's like, there's always two angles to every story. And yes, there is evil, and yes, there's injustice, and yes, there's like, the peril of human nature. But then there's also redemption. There's also grace. There's also second chances. There's also triumph. There's also innovation. There's all, you know what I mean? Like, I think it just comes down at a base level. It's like the glass half full, glass half empty thing. And the only person it really affects, I mean, it definitely affects a lot, but as far as you're concerned, it's only affecting you, how you see the world. If you see yourself as somebody who's empowered and unstoppable, that's a much better place than someone who's underprivileged, at a disadvantage. All of those to me just make a better story. So, privilege. From one white male to whoever is listening out there, that's my thoughts. To sum it all up, I'd like to say my hope and my desire is for you to thrive, for all of us to thrive. I am a believer in freedom, individuality, free will, individual potential, the potential of human beings to create and do amazing things. We all have our heroes. We all have the stories, and all of those folks overcome adversity, and you'd be hard-pressed to find any stories about folks who got where they're at, did amazing feats by blaming other people for their problems. Hate to say it. But I hope you've enjoyed this. This has been my thoughts on this and that. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, comments. You can hit me up at JeffreyJoslinmusic@gmail.com. Love hearing from you. Weigh in. You can leave your thoughts in the comments section as well. But love to hear your thoughts on this and that as well. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. So I'm going to plop this in here, something I was getting to, and then I got off topic because I don't know if you can tell, but this is all off the top of the head. I don't really prepare anything for this. Maybe I will for some stuff, and most of this just comes from my own things I think about in general. I have to get off my chest. So sometimes I might forget, where I'm going. I have to come back to it. This is one of those times. But I was talking about my love for Black people and Black culture, and my heart for them, and what I saw some of the Black Lives Matter narrative doing to them. And this was like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and maybe some of you listening, watching this might remember, but I posted this thing on Facebook because it was really getting to me, and I just felt like I saw my Black brothers and sisters being manipulated and enslaved in ways that I don't think they were aware of. And it's this kind of victim mentality. All the narrative is kind of like playing into that. It's like, yeah, you're a victim, being victimized by white cops, and all this kind of distaste and distrust of the entire American police force, or at least certain police forces in certain cities. But anyways, I posted this thing on Facebook. And the gist of it was a lot of what I'm saying now. It's just like, here's a list of look at these heroes of Black culture. Look at the evidence that you are victorious. You are a victor, not a victim. And just kind of made my case for that. Like, no matter what, I know what you're hearing on the TV, I know what you're hearing on the radio, I know what you're hearing from these celebrities and politicians, but what I'm saying to you as your brother in Christ, and as your brother in humanity, is, yeah, you're being sold a bill of goods here, and I'm not objectively, yes, these things happened, these people died, and you can get into the factual nature of the situations and the encounters between the police officers and the individuals at the time, but that's not my point. The point is, I saw this victim mentality being sold to them and then buying it and then turning on their white brothers and sisters. And again, this blanketed response and this hatred and vengeance and anger towards them. And, I probably overstepped my bounds as far, like it's always a weird thing being a white dude trying to say some stuff to people of other races or whatever, with regards to, certain things that maybe I didn't think that, with regards to the culture of hip hop or the culture of female, pop star. I think mostly it's like what they're selling to kids, whether it be like scantily clad, this or that, or like booty shaking or whatever. I don't know. Whatever it is might be your thing. I think a lot of my concern is just that it's being sold to them and they're buying it. And I understand that there's an agenda behind it. That's all. And but it was like, I think overwhelmingly the majority of the responses that I got from my black friends and peers liked it, had not kind things to say, and then in came all these other people I didn't know. There might have been a couple of them I did know, but not very well. Most of them I didn't know, coming in to come after Whitey. And man, they let me have it, dude. And it was like, here I was trying to do this kind and loving thing. And, they say, oh, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But my intent was really to say, look how awesome you are. Look how victorious you are. And don't let the mainstream media and this narrative tell you who you are and what you can or can't accomplish. I was speaking towards this victim mentality, which I believe knows no race. The victim mentality can affect. It's just like I mentioned before, like you're either a victor or a victim. And if you're a victim, you're automatically at a disadvantage. You will lose because everybody else has the power but you. And you've given it all away. And these folks came in and it was like they were defending their victim status with their tight enclosed fist. Like, yeah, I am a victim, and how dare you try to tell me that I'm not? It's like, okay, sorry, man. Go on and continue in your victimhood. Go on and continue in your blaming folks. Go on and continue in your I'll never make it, or our life's so tough for me, or whatever. Like, again, I'm not disputing your circumstances. All I'm trying to do is give you back your power that you keep giving away. But that was one situation in which I really shied away from posting on Facebook or sharing my opinion, because I think I have the tendency to be kind of non-confrontational in that situation where I felt very passionate. I wanted to say something. All of a sudden, it was kind of like, back to the privilege thing. It's like, oh, you don't get to say anything because you're white. It's like, all right, well, guess I'll take my little, my little opinion and go elsewhere because it's not wanted here. So that was what I wanted to add to the conversation.